I had always loved science, chemistry, biology, anything that let me tinker, mix, and discover. But I had never imagined that a science project could change me, completely. It all started on a quiet afternoon in the lab, the kind of place where the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and chemicals, where glass beakers clinked softly like tiny warnings. I remember thinking, this is just another project. Just another experiment. But I was wrong. My name's Alex. I'm a senior in high school, a student who's always been cautious, even shy, but curious to the point of obsession when it came to science. I loved solving problems, running tests, watching reactions, predictable ones, of course. Stability was comfortable. Control was comforting. But that day, control was the first thing I lost. The project was supposed to be simple: create a formula that could subtly change physical properties of objects for the school science fair. I had spent weeks mixing compounds, carefully noting reactions, measuring, recording. Everything was controlled, precise, until I decided to take a small risk. Just one small test on myself. I reasoned that if I could show a tiny biological change, it would impress the judges. No harm done, right? At first, it was nothing. I sat at my workstation, the formula carefully contained in a small vial, shimmering faintly under the fluorescent lab lights. My hands shook slightly as I uncorked it. The metallic scent hit my nose, a mixture of something floral and chemical. I hesitated, staring at the pale liquid, wondering if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. My lab partner, Jenna, had already left for the day, leaving me alone in the lab. Perfect. No witnesses. No judgment. Just me, and the experiment. I inhaled deeply and took the tiniest sip. Instantly, a strange warmth spread through my body, starting at my chest and radiating outward. It was subtle at first, a tingling, almost like the nervous flutter before a test I hadn't studied for, but it didn't feel dangerous. I laughed nervously to myself. Okay, that's it, I said, trying to convince myself nothing would happen. Just a minor effect, nothing permanent. I headed to the mirror by the lab bench, expecting, well, nothing. But even that first glance made my heart skip. My skin looked softer, almost luminous. My jawline seemed less pronounced. My lips, fuller. I leaned closer, touching my cheek, feeling the smoothness, the unfamiliar curve of my features. My pulse quickened. Something was happening. Something real. And the thrill of it mixed with panic like gasoline on fire. I could hear my own breath, uneven, rapid. What had I done? Could I reverse it? My mind raced, cataloging every possible consequence. But another part of me, a quieter, darker part, felt excited, curious, alive. I touched my hair and noticed it felt different somehow, silkier, finer, like it was meant to frame my face just so. I had never thought about these things before, not really. But now, staring at my reflection, I felt a flutter of desire, pride, confusion, all at once. And then the dress happened. I know it sounds sudden, but in that moment, I needed to see the transformation fully. My dorm room, well, technically, my lab area, was private, empty, silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. I found a soft blouse, a skirt that had been in my drawer for a past school play, and my heart raced as I slipped them on. The fabric brushed against my skin in ways I hadn't expected, delicate and thrilling. I noticed my posture changing as I moved, my hips swaying slightly more, my shoulders softer. I was different. And yet, not fake. Somehow, I felt like this version of me had been hiding all along, waiting for the right moment, waiting for a chance to emerge. My reflections stared back, almost unrecognizable, yet undeniably me. And in that quiet lab, I felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration that I had never experienced before. Then came the first real pang of fear. My pulse jumped when I heard footsteps outside the lab door. Was someone returning? A janitor? A teacher? My heart hammered, the mixture of panic and excitement almost too much to bear. I hid behind the counter, adjusting my wig slightly, trying not to make a sound, while my reflection mocked me from the mirror. Every second felt like a test. And in a way, it was. Because that was the moment I realized this wasn't just a science project anymore. This was something else. Something personal. Something I could no longer control entirely. The formula wasn't just changing the physical, It was changing me, my identity, my sense of self. And the worst part? The thrill was addictive. I sank into a chair, trembling slightly, fingers tracing the edge of my skirt. My mind reeled with questions. Could I go back to normal? Should I? What would Jenna say if she saw me like this? Or worse, what if someone discovered my secret before I even had a chance to understand it myself? I stared at my reflection, heart racing, and whispered to no one, "What have I done?" And that's when I noticed the notebook on the counter, the one where I'd been recording every observation, every measurement. A small smear of formula had dripped onto it, the glowing liquid glinting under the lab lights. Somehow, it felt like a warning. A promise. A challenge. I didn't know it then, but that tiny smear was the first sign of a chain of events that would pull me deeper into a world I hadn't imagined, one where science, curiosity, and my own desires collided in ways I could never predict. By the time I left the lab that evening, I wasn't the same. I could feel it in the sway of my hips, the soft curve of my jaw, the flutter of excitement mixed with fear. And as I walked back to my dorm, clutching my notebook and trying to act normal, I realized the truth. My science project wasn't just about winning a fair anymore. It was about discovering something far more dangerous, far more thrilling, and far more feminized than I could have ever imagined. The following days were a whirlwind. Every morning, I returned to the lab with a mix of dread and anticipation, clutching my notebook as if it could shield me from what was happening. I tried to maintain a normal routine, attending classes, hanging out with friends, all while secretly obsessing over the subtle changes the formula had begun to impose. At first, it was almost imperceptible, a slight softness to my features, a subtle shift in the curve of my waist, fingers a little more delicate. But each day, each test, the transformation became harder to ignore. My reflection in the mirror no longer felt like a reflection, it felt like a window into someone I hadn't fully known existed. I remember the first time I experimented with clothes deliberately. I had found an old blouse and skirt tucked away in my dorm closet, a leftover from a school play. Slipping them on was surreal. The fabric brushed against my skin, soft and intimate, and for the first time, I noticed how my posture changed instinctively. My shoulders softened, my hips swayed in a rhythm that felt natural, almost as if my body was remembering something it had always known but never expressed. The thrill was intoxicating. My pulse raced as I adjusted the wig I had borrowed from a friend. My hair, soft and silky, framed my face in a way that accentuated features I hadn't dared to appreciate before. I stared at myself in the mirror, every detail magnified, the curve of my cheekbones, the shape of my lips, the delicate line of my jaw. Part of me panicked, what if someone saw me like this? But another part of me shivered with anticipation. Jenna, my lab partner, had no idea. She was brilliant, focused entirely on her own project, unaware of the secret experiment I was running on myself. Some part of me hated the secrecy, the isolation, but another part knew this was something I had to experience alone. The risk, the danger, the possibility of being caught, that's what made it thrilling. I started keeping a strict schedule, alternating between regular life and my private experiments. Each session in the lab became more daring. I experimented with makeup, learning to contour my features to match the subtle changes happening to my body. A touch of blush made my cheekbones pop. Eyeliner gave my eyes depth, mascara accentuated my lashes. I found myself practicing soft, feminine gestures, how to tilt my chin, the way to cross my legs delicately, how to walk in heels without faltering. The first real scare came when I almost walked into a friend while fully transformed. I had been adjusting my wig and smoothing my skirt, not noticing the quiet footsteps behind me. The reflection in the glass door startled me. I froze mid-step, breath catching in my throat. My friend paused, squinted, and said something that made my stomach twist. "You look different today. Did you do something with your hair?" I stammered, my voice catching slightly, forcing a laugh. Just experimenting with a new style." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, every nerve on edge. I excused myself quickly, heart pounding, and retreated to the privacy of the lab. That moment, small as it seemed, confirmed my worst fear. This transformation was visible, noticeable, and undeniable. And yet, I couldn't stop. Each day, I pushed the boundaries further. I tried new outfits, played with different wigs, experimented with heels of varying heights. Each change brought a mix of exhilaration and vulnerability, a delicate balance between empowerment and exposure. I found myself drawn to the mirror more and more, studying every detail, marveling at the way my body moved differently, the way my features softened, the way my voice, when I practiced speaking softly, sounded unfamiliar yet strangely right. The lab became my sanctuary, a secret world where I could explore this new identity without judgment. But even in that private space, I felt the suspense building. Every creak of the door, every passing shadow outside the window, made my pulse spike. What if someone came back early? What if the formula had unpredictable effects? The thrill of the unknown kept me tethered to a constant edge of tension. One evening, I decided to push the experiment further. I took the full formula, carefully measuring it, and applied it again, feeling the familiar warmth spreading through my body. This time, the changes were undeniable. My waist narrowed, my hips curved more distinctly, and my skin seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. I gasped, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, heart racing. My reflection in the mirror was no longer just a subtle version of me, it was someone completely new. I began to practice speaking in a softer, more melodic tone, testing how my voice matched my appearance. I walked back and forth, feeling the heels click against the lab floor, noticing the subtle sway of my hips, the way my chest moved with every breath. The sensation was intoxicating, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. I had never felt so alive, and so vulnerable, in my life. But with each step forward, the suspense grew. I started imagining scenarios where someone could walk in, a teacher, a friend, a janitor. My mind raced through every possibility. What would I do if they saw me like this? Could I explain it as part of the science project, or would I have to hide everything? Each scenario made my pulse race faster, each near miss more electrifying. And then, one day, it happened. The formula had accelerated the transformation to the point where it was unmistakable. My features, my body, even my gestures had changed. I was fully feminized, and the realization hit me like a shockwave. I looked in the mirror, taking in every detail, the soft curves, the delicate features, the confident posture. I ran my hands over my face and body, heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. But as I stared at my reflection, I felt the weight of the suspense closing in. What if Jenna came in unexpectedly? What if someone saw me on the way to the fair? My secret, my experiment, my identity, all of it was on the verge of exposure. And yet, a small, defiant part of me reveled in the danger, in the thrill of living on the edge, in the knowledge that this transformation was mine to experience, even if it came at a cost. I realized then that this was no longer just a science project. It was a journey into a part of myself I had never explored, a test of courage, desire, and identity. And the stakes were higher than ever. One wrong move, one accidental glance from the wrong person, and everything could be revealed. The suspense was unbearable, and yet, I couldn't wait to see what would happen next. The day of the school science fair arrived faster than I expected. My heart was hammering as I carefully carried my project into the crowded gymnasium. Rows of tables displayed every imaginable experiment: volcanoes, circuits, robotics. But mine, the formula, was something entirely different. And so was I. I moved carefully, heels clicking softly against the floor. My transformation was no longer subtle. The formula had reshaped my body: soft curves, delicate hands, smooth skin. My face reflected a confidence I had never known, yet beneath it, a storm of anxiety churned. What if someone sees me like this? The first test came immediately. A group of students crowded around my table, asking questions. I smiled, voice soft and melodic, hands moving gracefully as I demonstrated the effects of my chemical formula on a small plant sample. Their eyes lingered, part curiosity, part awe, and I could feel my pulse quicken. I had hoped no one would notice me personally, but even strangers could sense something different. Then came Jenna, my lab partner. She approached, clipboard in hand, cheerful as always, unaware of my secret. "Alex, everything looks perfect. Did you do something with your hair?" I froze. My reflection in the polished table surface mocked me, every feature feminized and delicate. I laughed nervously. Just some styling. Part of the presentation." Her eyes narrowed slightly, curiosity peaked. "Okay. Well, let's hope the judges like it. The suspense hit like a jolt of electricity. I realized just how precarious my situation had become. Every detail, my hair, my makeup, the sway of my hips, was exposed to scrutiny. And even the smallest misstep could reveal my secret. 1. The unexpected twist. Halfway through the fair, a rival student, Marcus, approached my table. He was known for pranks and for being mercilessly competitive. "Wow, Alex, you look different today," he said, smirking. "What's your secret?" I forced a laugh, careful to keep my voice steady. "Don't show fear, don't show anything." But Marcus leaned closer, eyes sharp, as if he could see through every layer of disguise. My heart raced. "Just experimenting," I replied softly. He raised an eyebrow, clearly not satisfied. "Interesting experiment," he said with a sly grin, glancing at my figure. "You really went all in, here." Panic surged. Marcus could suspect too much. The danger of exposure became real. My transformation was no longer private. I had to think fast. As the judges approached my table, I realized that my formula's effects were accelerating. My voice became softer, almost musical. My hips swayed naturally. My fingers moved delicately over the experiment materials, hands trembling slightly with nerves. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but also exhilarated. Every interaction felt like a test. I had to smile perfectly, answer every question gracefully, and maintain the illusion of confidence. And yet, every second, the risk of discovery loomed. A wig slipping, a skirt wrinkling, a stray lock of hair, any mistake could shatter the persona I had built. The judges leaned closer, asking questions about chemical reactions and plant growth. I explained each step with a soft, measured tone, feeling the thrill of embodying this new self fully. Their faces reflected curiosity and admiration, but inside me, anxiety clawed at every fiber. Suddenly, a teacher walked by, unexpectedly stopping at my table. My heart nearly stopped. I adjusted my skirt and straightened my posture, trying to look calm. "Alex, that's impressive," the teacher said. "Very thorough work." Relief washed over me, but only briefly. As the teacher moved on, I noticed Marcus smirking in the background, whispering to another student. I realized then that the suspense wasn't just about being noticed, it was about someone understanding, someone seeing me completely. Another challenge came when I spilled a small tray of chemical samples. They clattered to the floor, threatening to reveal my vulnerability. I bent carefully, heels digging into the gym floor, adjusting the tray and my wig simultaneously. My breath caught. One wrong movement could ruin everything. Later, I sneaked a glance at the reflection in the glass trophy case across the room. My feminized self stared back, flawless and beautiful, yet trembling with fear. The transformation was total. My voice, gestures, even the way I breathed had changed. And for the first time, I realized how much I was beginning to enjoy this new identity. But the thrill was interlaced with terror. Every second of exposure, every observer, every potential slip reminded me that this could all collapse. The duality of exhilaration and vulnerability was almost unbearable. The climax hit when Marcus tried to draw attention. "Hey, everyone. Check out Alex's new look." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My heart raced as I froze. The judge's attention shifted. My mind screamed, "Think fast, act natural." I straightened my posture, smoothed my skirt, and addressed the group with confidence. "It's part of my experiment," I said, voice calm but soft. I wanted to show how physical perception can change emotional response in a controlled experiment. The crowd murmured, curiosity overtaking judgment. Marcus looked frustrated, but I realized that my composure had diffused the situation. The suspense lingered, everyone was watching, every detail scrutinized, but I had survived the first real public test. Later, alone by the trophy case, I ran my hands along my feminized features, touching my cheeks, tracing the soft curve of my hips. I adjusted my wig, smiled at my reflection, and whispered, "I did it. I'm me." But the danger wasn't over. The formula wasn't entirely stable. I could feel it pulsing subtly under my skin, a constant reminder that the transformation was ongoing. One slip, one accidental touch, one wandering eye, and everything could unravel. The suspense was now fully realized. I had survived public exposure, navigated rivalry, and embraced my new identity, but the consequences were far from settled. The gymnasium had quieted down slightly as the fair progressed, but my heart was still pounding like a drum in my chest. My formula had worked beyond my wildest expectations. My transformation was complete. Every curve, every delicate feature, every soft gesture had been reshaped by the experiment. I was no longer just Alex, I was something new, something feminized, and terrifyingly exposed. I stood behind my table, hands folded delicately, trying to steady my trembling legs. The heels I had mastered now felt like extensions of my body, yet every step reminded me of my vulnerability. My wig had been adjusted countless times, every strand in place, every movement calculated to maintain the illusion. And yet, I knew the moment of truth was coming. It came faster than I expected. A teacher I hadn't seen approach, clipboard in hand, stopped at my table. My stomach lurched. "Alex, this is impressive," the teacher said, eyes scanning my notes and my presentation. "Your explanation, and your appearance, very professional. Innovative, even." I forced a soft, confident smile, voice steady yet melodic. "Thank you." I tried to show the experiment's impact clearly. Relief washed over me, but it was brief. A whisper of movement behind me drew my attention. Marcus, the rival who had already tried to expose me, had returned, eyes glinting with mischief. My heart sank. I could feel his gaze tracing every curve, every detail, every carefully constructed gesture. The thrill of transformation collided with panic. The very public possibility of exposure surged like electricity through me. Then it happened. The formula, still active under my skin, pulsed strangely. My reflection in the polished table surface flickered, as if showing a version of myself that wasn't fully stable. My pulse spiked, and I realized that this wasn't just about being caught, it was about control. Would the changes reverse, or was I already trapped in this feminized version of myself? I adjusted my skirt quickly, hoping no one noticed the subtle tremor in my hands. But my mind raced. What if someone had seen me like this before? What if Jenna or the judges realized the secret behind the experiment? Panic mixed with exhilaration, a dangerous cocktail of thrill and fear that made my knees weak. And then, a sound, a laugh, soft but sharp, cut through the murmur of the fair. Marcus had called someone over, pointing subtly in my direction. I froze, every muscle tensing. The possibility of being discovered, of my secret unraveling in front of everyone, hit me with full force. Isabella. I mean, if she were here, she'd know immediately. But no one else had that context. Still, the fear was almost unbearable. My fingers clenched involuntarily, brushing against my smooth, feminized skin. I had never felt so exposed, so alive. The judges approached, and my presentation had to continue. I spoke carefully, voice soft but clear, gesturing elegantly to the samples on my table. Each word felt like a test, each motion a performance. But as I glanced at Marcus, I noticed something chilling, a hint of recognition in his expression. He was enjoying this. He was savoring the suspense. And I realized, with a shiver, that he might be the one to push me over the edge. A sudden knock on the gym doors made me jump. Every heartbeat thundered in my chest. The doors opened slowly, and a shadow filled the doorway. A teacher? A janitor? Or someone who could unravel everything? The shadow moved closer, and my eyes locked on the figure. The room seemed to constrict around me, the lights, the reflections, the murmurs of the crowd, all fading into a tense silence. My heels clicked softly as I instinctively straightened my posture, smoothing my skirt, adjusting my wig, trying to project calm and confidence. The newcomer stepped into the light, and I froze. The recognition in their eyes made my blood run cold. I wanted to turn, to run, to undo everything, but it was too late. My secret, my transformation, my carefully curated persona, all were exposed to the possibility of discovery. I took a shaky breath, every sense heightened. The thrill of the transformation surged through me, but so did the terror. This was the ultimate test. Could I maintain control, maintain my identity, and survive the consequences of the experiment? Or would everything I had worked for collapse in an instant? The shadow moved closer, and my pulse quickened. The gym seemed impossibly large, impossibly silent, yet every sound, the shuffle of feet, the rustle of papers, the faint hum of the lights, was amplified in my ears. And then, just as my hands clutched my skirt, the figure spoke. "Alex. I need to see something." My heart stopped. Every muscle tensed. The judges, the students, Marcus, they all faded from my focus. The entire world had narrowed down to this one moment, one decision, one possibility. I could feel the formula pulsing, a reminder that my transformation was no longer fully mine to control. I had gone too far, risked too much. And yet, a part of me, the part that had reveled in the thrill, the power, the feminine grace, wanted to see it through, wanted to embrace what I had become. My reflection in the glass case caught my eye one last time. Smooth curves, delicate features, confident posture, but eyes wide with fear and anticipation. I realized then that nothing would ever be the same. The screen fades to black.